Namaskar. Last week we made a start with Canto 11. Which is about greater mind. And I think we read to the break on page 264. But we also got a very interesting question. A question about the thought-created worlds. The lines come at the bottom of page 263. There's a passage of a few lines after speaking about King Asvapati's homecoming, entering again the immortal's air and drinking again his pure and mighty source. Immediately after that, at the bottom of page 263, and going on to the next page, we have these lines. Immutable in rhythmic calm and joy, he saw, sovereignly free in limitless light, the unfallen plains, the thought-created worlds, where knowledge is the leader of the act and matter is of thinking substance made. Feeling, a heaven bird poised on dreaming wings, answers truth's call as to a parent's voice. Form, luminous, leaps from the all-shaping beam, and will is a conscious chariot of the gods, and life a splendor stream of musing force carries the voices of the mystic suns. So I was asked to explain this passage, and particularly the phrase about the thought-created worlds. I was baffled. I didn't know how to answer this question. So I turned to Dr. Alok Pandey and asked him to help us. And he's given a very beautiful, illuminating answer, which I'll share with you all now. He says, these lines, appearing in Canto 11 of Book 2 of Savitri, the kingdoms and godheads of the greater mind, describe the worlds climbing from the limits of human mind, the triple layers of physical, vital, and thinking mind, to the overmind regions. It is the world proper to thought, which is free to act there without any hindrance. In those worlds, it is thought that is the creator, the formateur or form maker, as the mother has called it. The godheads of these worlds are stationed in spaces of rhythmic calm and joy. This phrase, rhythmic calm and joy, reveals this realm to be the birthplace of mantras, which have come down to rishis who have ascended to the top of these higher planes of consciousness. Here, the light is set free and not cabined in narrow forms of words with fixed meanings. Here are realms of seeing thought, where revelation, illumination, and intuition are the ways to knowledge. Although absolute sight is lacking, yet ignorance is not there. The Godheads are conscious of a greater light beyond, from which they have emerged. They have not yet fallen into the realms of little mind, where ignorance abounds. There, knowledge of oneness and truth and the true law of things is the leader. Unlike here in our world, where ignorance leads us towards knowledge. Worlds where force leads, or the realm of subtle matter, where beauty of form is predominant. There, in those higher realms of mind, knowledge is the leader, subordinating force and form to its sovereign light. Each of the worlds has a characteristic power that builds the forms and drives the beings of that world. In the vital world, it is force that builds the forms, which in turn respond readily to vital forces. In the higher realms of the greater mind, rhythmic thought vibrations build the worlds. That is why we see that these mantras are also regarded as deities. Even the meters are regarded as living goddesses or living energies, since mantra has built these worlds. In the ancient story of Rishi Vishvamitra, we see him building a heavenly world for Trishanku, the ancestor of Rama, to live in permanently. The substance of these higher worlds responds readily to the pressure of thought, the rhythmic, luminous thought which is found in these regions. Here in our world, matter is a substance that responds with some difficulty and adjustment to thought, or even to vital force and spiritual energies. There, it is a substance that vibrates with those energies. In other words, the substance of those worlds is luminous and vibrating with rhythmic calm and joy. That substance is what all the beings traditionally described as gods are made up of in those worlds, to different degrees, of course. This is the import of these wonderful lines, which set the tone for the much more that is yet to come. So I'm sure you won't be able to keep all this in your memory. If anybody would like to have this full text, you can give your email address to Kavita and we will send it to you. So we're grateful to Dr. Alok for this illumination. So now we can go back to where we stopped last week. That's at the break on page 264. And we can continue reading from there. This is on page 264, and I'll be reading lines 166 to 295. This is pages 264 to 68. So I'm starting at the break on page 264. That's line 166. In previous cantos, we've seen that Sri Aurobindo often divides up the revelation into 3 or more layers, rising layers. So in the world of the little mind, there we saw the physical mind and the vital mind, and then the mind of reason. And then there were more beyond that. So here we are starting to read about this triple realm of the greater mind. And we'll again see that there are these 3 levels. It starts like that. A triple realm of ordered thought came first. A small beginning of immense ascent. Above were bright ethereal skies of mind, a packed and endless soar, as if sky pressed sky, buttressed against the void on bastioned light. The highest strove to neighbor eternity. The largest widened into the infinite. But though immortal, mighty and divine, the first realms were close and kin to human mind. Their deities shape our greater thinking's roads. A fragment of their puissance can be ours. These breadths were not too broad for our souls to range. These heights were not too high for human hope. A triple flight of stairs, a triple flight led to this triple world. Although abrupt for common strengths to tread, its upward slope looks down on our earth boys. On a slant not too precipitously steep, one could turn back, traveling deep descending lines to commune with the mortal's universe. the mighty wardens of the ascending stair, who intercede with the all-creating Word, there waited for the pilgrim heaven-bound soul, holding the 1,000 keys of the beyond, they proffered their knowledge to the climbing mind and filled the life with thought's immensities. The prophet hierophants of the occult law, the flame-bright hierarchs of the divine truth, interpreters between man's mind and God's, they bring the immortal fire to mortal men. Iridescent, bodying the invisible, the guardians of the eternal's bright degrees fronted the sun in radiant phalanxes. Afar, they seemed a symbol imagery, illumined originals of the shadowy script in which our sight transcribes the ideal ray, or icons figuring a mystic truth, but nearer, gods and living presences. A march of friezes marked the lowest steps, fantastically ornate and richly small. They had room for the whole meaning of a world, symbols minute of its perfection's joy, strange beasts that were nature's forces made alive, and wakened to the wonder of his role, man, grown an image undefaced of God, and objects the fine coin of beauty's reign. I'll pause there, and we can look back. There's a lot of difficult vocabulary in this passage. We can have a look at some of these points. So, Asvapati is seeing that as he looks upward, first there's a triple realm, 3 levels of ordered thought. And he sees that's just a small beginning of an immense ascent, a much, much greater, endless ascent. Above were bright, ethereal skies of mind, wonderful, rarefied regions. It's as if a packed and endless soar, as if sky pressed sky, buttressed against the void on bastioned light. In architecture, a buttress is so this realm is one of great vastness and wideness. But the poet tells us, although these realms are immortal, mighty and divine, the lower ones, the first ones, were close and kin to human mind, closely related to the higher levels of our own minds. The deities of those levels shape our greater thinking's roads. They indicate the ways where we can go higher and wider. A fragment, a tiny piece of their puissance, of their power, can be ours. We can achieve that. These breadths, these broad spaces, were not too broad for our souls to range. It is possible for our souls to enter those realms. Those heights were not too high for human hope. A triple flight, so a set of 3 levels of stairs led to this triple world. The poet says that this triple flight of stairs was abrupt, rather straight, rather steep for ordinary common strengths to tread. It would be difficult for us to climb up those steep stairs. But that upward slope does look down on our earth poise. If one is there, it is possible to turn back on a slant, not too precipitously steep. It's not too abrupt. One could turn back, traveling deep, descending lines to commune, to communicate with the mortal's universe, our universe. So there on those stairs, the mighty wardens, there are guardians of these stairs. Their task is to intercede, to give some communication with the all-creating Word, connecting the mortal's universe with that creative word of the ideal. So those guardians are waiting for the souls who are rising up towards heaven. Those wardens were waiting for the pilgrim, heaven-bound soul. And like guardians everywhere, they have the keys. They hold the 1,000 keys to all the different realms of the beyond. But when the pilgrim soul is mounting upwards, those wardens offer that soul. They proffer their knowledge to the climbing mind and filled the life with thought's immensities. They are helpful beings who help us to rise higher and wider. The poet calls them the prophet hierophants of the occult law. Prophet, it's a word that we think of beings who can see into the future or to the higher levels. And hierophants, they are priests, sacred, who have sacred knowledge, who worship the higher truths. They are the experts in that occult law. And they in themselves, they're bright like flames. They are hierarchs, they're arranged in a hierarchy. They are interpreters between man's mind and God's. And they bring the immortal fire from above to mortal men. There, Asvapati sees iridescent, shining with all the colors of the rainbow, but bodying, giving form to the invisible. He sees the guardians of the eternal's bright degrees. Each of these steps is a bright degree, and those guardians are facing towards the sun in radiant phalanxes. A phalanx is a unit in an army, particularly in the classical world, the phalanx. So there they're ranked in order of power and authority. When Asvapati sees them from below, from far below, those guardians and those radiant phalanxes, they appear to be symbolic figures. They seemed a symbolic imagery, illumined originals of the shadowy script in which our sight transcribes the ideal ray. Illumined, they are full of light, but he sees them as if they are the originals of the shadowy script that's not so illumined, the kind of sight in which our sight, our vision, transcribes or translates that pure ideal ray from above. Or they're like icons, divine images, pictures, figuring each of them a mystic truth. But as he draws nearer to them, he sees that they are not symbol images or icons. They are, in fact, gods and living presences. Then the poet turns back to the lowest steps. And these lines remind me of what we see here in our South Indian temples. We go inside the temple, and the sacred area is raised up, and around the bottom line there are a series of pictures, symbolic pictures. That's a march of friezes, marked the lowest steps. These are the pictures that seem like symbols at first. When he gets nearer, he sees that they are not symbols, they are really living presences. But when he sees them pictured, they are fantastically ornate and richly small, and had room for the whole meaning of a world. If you're lucky enough to find a pujari in one of our South Indian temples who can take you around and show you those friezes and tell you the meanings of them all, it's all so much full of significance and knowledge. So these friezes had room for the whole meaning of a world. They are shown in very small forms, symbols, minute, of the joy, of the perfection of that world. Some of them look like strange beasts, animals, that are nature's forces made alive. And man also is shown there. Man wakened to the wonder of his role, the mission of humanity in our universe is shown. And objects, so beautifully made, the fine coin of beauty's realm. But then the poet tells us that these steps, these different levels, lead up to very wide terrains, territories. And in front of this ascending epiphany, this revelation, he sees beings, world times enjoyers, favorites of world bliss, the masters of things actual, lords of the hours, playmates of youthful nature and child God, creators of matter by hid stress of mind, whose subtle thoughts support unconscious life and guide the fantasy of brute events, stood there, a race of young, keen-visioned gods, king children born on wisdom's early plane, taught in her school world-making's mystic play, arch-masons of the eternal thaumaturge, moulders and measurers of fragmented space. They have made their plan of the concealed and known, a dwelling house for the invisible king. So these are the beings, the first level of beings, who are creating these thought-created worlds. These are the lowest level. They are creating matter, obeying the Eternal's deep command. They have built in the material front of things this wide world kindergarten of young souls, where the infant spirit learns through mind and sense to read the letters of the cosmic script and study the body of the cosmic self and search for the secret meaning of the whole. That is our world. These creators, these formateurs, have built in the material front of things on the surface this world kindergarten where we young souls learn through our mind and our senses to learn the message, the letters of the cosmic script, the code in which our universe expresses itself. They've given us the opportunity to study the body of the cosmic self, the cosmic existence, and search for the secret meaning of the whole. So these beings give a mold, a shape, a form to all that spirit conceives. Spirit is formless, so it needs a mold to bring forms into existence. Persuading nature into visible moods, they lend a finite shape to infinite things. Each power that leaps from the unmanifest, leaving the largeness of the Eternal's peace, they seized and held by their precision eye and made a figurant in the cosmic dance. The idea is that divine powers leap down from the unmanifested realms. They leave the largeness of the Eternal's peace, the wideness of infinity. And then these beings on the mind level, they seize hold of each of those powers as they come down. And they hold them, he says, by their precision eye. A precision is somebody who is almost too precise or too concerned about preciseness. But this is their role, to seize on these powers as they come down and give them a very precise place and position. It gives each of them a role to play in the cosmic dance. So for each of those powers that comes, it's free caprice, it's freedom to do whatever it wants. Those masters of things actual, they bind it by rhythmic laws and compel each one to accept its particular posture and its line and its place in the wizardry of an ordered universe. In this way, the all-containing was contained in form. Oneness was carved into units measurable. The limitless built into a cosmic sum. Unending space was beaten, hammered into a curve. Indivisible time into small minutes cut. And the infinitesimal, the tiniest little portions and pieces are massed to keep secure the mystery of the formless spirit cast into form. Invincibly, they're infallible in their work. Invincibly, their craft devised for use the magic of sequent number and signs spell, design's miraculous potency was caught, laden with beauty and significance, loaded. Laden means loaded with beauty and significance. And by the determining mandate of their gaze, they, just by looking at it, they fix a place. And a figure, numbers, and quality join as equals in an inextricable identity. Figure and quality together, joined equally in this inextricable, they can't be separated, this identity. In this way, on each event, they stamped its curves of law and its trust and charge of burden circumstance. A free and divine incident no more at each moment willed, or adventure of the soul, a line foreseen of an immutable plan. It lengthened a fate-bound mysterious chain, one step more in necessity's long march. The mother has talked about this, that at a certain stage in the creative process, it's as if everything is completely free and anything can happen according to the whim or the will of the Creator. But now he's showing us, as we go upwards, that there's a lower level where everything gets fixed in its place and it's no longer completely free. It's no longer a divine incident, free divine incident, which can be willed to be something different at every moment, or can express the adventure of a soul. Instead, it becomes part of this plan, which once it's formed is immutable, it can't be changed. And each of these movements has its own place, extending this fate-bound, mysterious chain which links the whole universe and everything that happens in it, that keeps it all connected. A term, a limit, and a space of time was set for every eager power, every one of those powers, those souls that leaps down from the eternal. So that term restrains its will to monopolize the world. Every power would like to be all-powerful. So that's why these formateurs have to keep each thing in its place. That place is like a groove of bronze, very difficult to change, prescribed for every force, for every action, and shown to each moment its appointed place that has been fore-willed, willed in advance, inalterably, can't be changed, in the spiral, huge time loop, fugitive from eternity. Amazing lines. This spiral, this is a spiral coming down. This is a spiral which is escaping from infinity and eternity. It's a huge time loop. There's the spiral is like a loop. So by their thought, these beings are beginning to control all this. Inevitable. Their thoughts, like links of fate, imposed on the leap and lightning race of mind and on the frail, fortuitous flux of life and on the liberty of atomic things, immutable cause and adamant consequence. Their thoughts are like links of fate, one thing causing the next. But they impose their thoughts on mind, which says the leap and lightning race of mind. Mind moves very swiftly. And on the flow of life, he says the flux of life is frail and based on chance, fortuitous, and on the liberty of atomic things. He's speaking about the very deepest level of matter. They are imposing on those things which are relatively free, they're imposing immutable cause. It's going to be like that, it has to be like that. And adamant consequences which are hard, like the hardest possible substance. They can't be changed. So idea, which is on a much higher level, when it does this descent, it gives up the plastic infinity, all the flexibility and freedom to which it was born. And now at this level, it traced out instead of all those infinite possibilities, small, separate steps of chain work in a plot. Each thing has a significance which is part of the great plot or plan. Idea was immortal once. Now it gets tied to birth and end. It gets torn out from its immediacy of errorless sight. That was what King Aswapati regained so joyfully when he returned to his own realm, was this errorless sight. But now, at this level, these things get fixed. This, what was torn, knowledge was torn from its immediacy of errorless sight, of direct, perfect vision, infallible vision. Instead, knowledge has to get built up again from cells, small units of inference that are worked out by the mind. It gets built up into a fixed body of knowledge, which is flask and perishable. I think this word flask comes from a French word, flac, which means kind of floppy, weak, perishable. So knowledge bound, limited like that, it grows, but could not last, and broke, and to a new knowledge, new thinking's body left its place. The higher forms of knowledge changed, and a new thinking comes. And that is limiting. It makes a cage for the infinite's great-eyed seraphim thoughts. The seraphim are the highest order of angels. Those great-eyed thoughts of the infinite. They get confined in a cage, closed with a crisscross of world laws for bars, and hedged, restricted into a curt horizon's arc. It's very limited. That irised vision of the ineffable, the irised infinite vision of what can never be fully expressed. This is a limiting process that is going on. A timeless spirit was made the slave of the hours. The unbound was cast into a prison of birth to make a world that mind could grasp and rule on an earth which looked towards 1,000 suns, so that the created might grow nature's lord, and matter's depths be illumined with a soul, they tied to date and norm and finite scope the million mysteried movement of the One. This is the work of these first masters of things actual, creators of matter by hid stress of mind. This is the way they go about it. And their mission is to create a world that mind could grasp and rule. So, on our earth, which looked towards 1,000 suns, they tied to date and norm is standard, and finite scope, a limited possibility. What was the origin? The million mysteried movement of the One. That's where we'll stop for today. Which last paragraph?
From top of 266.
What do you want me to read?
From the top of 266.
Yes.
Till the paragraph of 268. Because you haven't read it.
I didn't read it. So first he was speaking about the levels, and then he says, top of page 266, he says, wide the terrains were that those levels serve, those stairs. There he sees, in front of the ascending epiphany, world times enjoyers, favorites of world bliss, the masters of things actual, lords of the hours, playmates of youthful nature and child God, creators of matter by hid stress of mind, whose subtle thoughts support unconscious life and guide the fantasy of brute events, stood there, a race of young, keen-visioned gods, king children, born on wisdom's early plane, taught in her school world-making's mystic play, archmasons of the eternal thaumaturge, molders and measurers of fragmented space, they have made their plan of the concealed and known, a dwelling house for the invisible King. Obeying the Eternal's deep command, they have built in the material front of things this wide world kindergarten of young souls, where the infant spirit learns through mind and sense to read the letters of the cosmic script and study the body of the cosmic self and search for the secret meaning of the whole. Is that enough? I don't know where. I thought I had read all that. No?
Now you stopped, and you went back to the beginning.
I see. Where did we stop?
You stopped at line 200.
I'll read the line because I
You read the line, yes. Which line?
On the top of page 266.
The top of 266 is but wide the terrains were.
That's where you stopped.
But I just read all this now.
Yes.
It's enough for today. Huh? Yes. Yeah. All right. Many difficult words in this.
What means iris?
Sorry? Irised. It means it contains all the colors of the rainbow. Sri Aurobindo uses it often in the poem, iris, to indicate, because all the colors are symbolic. So if all the colors...
thought that was iridescent.
There's iridescent is an adjective from that. Irised, yeah. It's from the Latin name of the rainbow goddess, Iris. And I suppose the flowers have this name for the same reason.
One Japanese flower is carrying iris.
Sorry?
One Japanese flower named iris. One Japanese flower is
Yes.
called iris. Is very beautiful.
Yes. The iris is the symbol of the kings of France. It has a special form, no? We'll stop there for today. Thanks to Sri Aurobindo. So today we read about the first levels, and next time we'll go on to the next higher level of beings.